Very good morning to all. It's a great pleasure to be a part of a panel discussion on Impact of Drone Policy 2021 on Indian drone market. I would like to thank Niti Aayog for allowing this platform to have a healthy discussion concerning the drone industry. With this, I would like to start the panel discussion by introducing our speakers for today. So our first speaker is Arjun Agrawal. Arjun is a co-founder of ARC Ventures and have invested over 18 million into the Indian drone ecosystem, facilitating indigenization and creation of robust manufacturing capabilities in India. Moreover, Arjun is also managing director India at Aerodyne, recognized as one of the leading drone service providers offering drones and their AI-based software on a service model. So a quick introduction from Arjun.
Hi, nice to meet you all. I think it's a great opportunity and a great pleasure to be part of a panel discussion discussing the impact of the drone policy along with Niti Aayog and my colleagues Vipul and Ankit, who are both true pioneers of the Indian drone industry. So pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Arjun. The next speaker is Ankit Mehta. Ankit Mehta is the co-founder and CEO of IDFOT, next generation drones system company that manufactures advanced UAVs for defense, homeland security, and industrial application. IDFOT's UAV, have been utilized for life-saving of service personnel and civilians in several anti-terror and counter-insurgency operations, disaster responses, security and surveillance missions. Today, its drones also serve the rural citizen of India by mapping Indian villages under Swamitva scheme. So just request Ankit to have a quick round of introduction about himself.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here on this panel with my fellow co-panelists. Again, for some of the leading lights in the Indian drone ecosystem. IdeaForge has been around since 2007, and it was the unfolding of the events in 2008 which sparked our desire to build these systems for the kind of use cases for which we find them deployed by our company at this point in time for various use cases in surveillance and other areas. And it was the pandemic that marked our arrival on the stage for enterprise drones, with the Swamitva scheme coming up and us building platforms for various use cases in the Swamitva scheme. So again, a very exciting space to be a part of, and the pandemic also saw a complete change of the regulations. So really looking forward to this discussion and sharing what we've experienced here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ankit. And the last speaker is Vipul Singh. Vipul Singh is a co-founder and CEO of RR Man Systems Private Limited, originated from IIT Kanpur in the year 2013 and presently headquartered in Bangalore, the technology hub of India. In the last 5 years of its existence, RR Man System has served key players across various verticals, both for the private and public sectors, by the continuous efforts on drone intelligence, hardware optimization, and design innovation. So just have a quick round of introduction from Vipul as well.
Thank you, Haider, and thanks a lot for having me on the panel. It's an honor to be able to join the panel with the other colleagues and leaders of the drone industry, as well as share my thoughts. So we have been around since 2013. I think we started, what helped made us to start our journey was this realization somewhere in late 2012 that in the future we see for the drones is very bright, and also the kind of use cases which will emerge in the civilian sector. So back then the use cases were primarily limited to either remote controlled aircrafts for fun applications or very advanced drones which were being used for defense and homeland security applications. So we realized that everything which is being done with the manned aircrafts in the civilian sector will primarily get replaced by the unmanned aircrafts in the civilian sector. So that is what was our first light bulb moment, and from there on, everything rest is a story. It took 9 years for us, maybe around 3-4 years from today or earlier than today, was the realization which happened to the rest of the world somewhere in 2000, let's say 16, 17 era is the time when the rest of the world as well as India started realizing the potential of drones for civilian sector and how it can impact the society. And then rest is a story. A lot of things happened in the Indian ecosystem, from the revival of the drone policy as well as standardizations. And as we see today, we're proud to contribute to some of the most impactful projects and use cases which exist in the country, both with the private and the public sector users.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vipul, for the round of introduction. And with this, I would just like to start the panel discussion. It's a great achievement. I mean, that we are living in times in India where drone companies are creating an impact to solve greater problems. So to begin with, my first question is for you, Arjun. I'm sure you get this a lot. With the new drone policy in place, what opportunities do you believe it creates for the entire drone ecosystem spreading across the public and the private sector in India?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, you're right. I do get this question a lot, both from the customer side and also from the investor side. Well, the liberalized drone rules from August 21, after many iterations and learnings from the industry, have paved the way to accelerate the industrial and commercial use of drones. Doing away with the conditional exemptions and putting an end to the restrictions on acquisition and processing of geospatial data is transforming the core sectors of the economy, which includes, defense, law enforcement, so many different sectors, enabling and will now set the ball in motion to help India truly become a drone hub by 2030, which is what we've kind of set out to do under the Prime Minister's leadership. As the vision for 2030 is clearly set, the regulatory relaxations, such as making the import of drone components unrestricted, is a clear booster for domestic innovation, skill development, creation of employment opportunities, promoting ease of doing business, as India seeks to develop indigenous capabilities, and under a vision guided by the Civil Aviation Ministry to have, hundreds, if not thousands of crores of turnover by drone manufacturing companies in India. This is the right kind of fillip that's been given to scale up our industrial capacity for both hardware, software, and service delivery. So, in terms of the actual opportunities that this policy is creating, I feel immediately, we're sitting with Ankit, we're sitting with Vipul, so many funding opportunities have opened up the doors. I think this is the first step that helps boost our entrepreneurs to actually facilitate the creation of domestic IP. So domestic IP is one of the key driving forces that will help India as a nation become a global leader in this particular space. Along with funding, which facilitates IP creation, we're also seeing a tremendous amount of job creation. We're seeing drone pilots spawning across the country, drone training centers, opportunities coming from all states, all kinds of sectors. This is a massive impetus for job creation in a country which has, one of the largest youth populations on the planet. Another great thing that's happening, at the end of the day, we have to realize that any particular technology or the use of technology has to improve our output. It has to improve our efficiency. It has to improve our productivity. And I think that is what drones are recognized to be really good at doing. So adoption of these technologies that are being created locally, domestically, are actually helping various sectors of ours. I believe it is now being clearly identified that land mapping, through the use of drones, saves us a lot of money. So the same thing can be applied to so many different sectors: oil and gas, agriculture, etc., etc. The last two major points that I see in this particular field is the reduction of an import bill, which is a big problem for our nation, and the potential increase of our export output, which I'm looking forward to contributing towards. So those are the major opportunities that I see at the minute.
Thank you so much for your response, Arjun. Ankit, how about you? What are your thoughts on this? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just struggling to unmute myself. So, so I think I definitely mirror what Arjun was saying just now in terms of the kind of opportunities that the ecosystem is bringing about. I think what has happened is that just prior to the pandemic, this ecosystem was a good to have technology, and everyone was, like if I have drones, great, but it's not sort of changing my life dramatically. It's just something that people had casual budgets for at the exploration stage and early stages. What the pandemic has done, and is that it has transformed, and not just the pandemic, actually, it's the pandemic, the incursions that happened, the wars that have taken place. It has transformed this sector from a good to have sector to a must have sector. And being a must have sector, the entire outlook of the ecosystem evolved in terms of from regulating and controlling and avoiding the use of drones to actually facilitating and enabling the use of drones. And the policy changes that we saw over the last year or so have all been eventually reflective of the mindset shift, which is to take the drone industry from being a industry that is looked at with a lot of suspicion, with a lot of fear, to an industry that is now looked at with a lot of opportunity, and from being a tightly regulated sector, not tightly regulated in the sense that it is still tightly regulated, but it is easier to get into the ecosystem. And I think that's a great place to be, because the more people you let into the ecosystem, the more compliance you have, the lesser inertia people have to be a part of the ecosystem, and therefore lesser people are outside the ecosystem. So I think that's something which is really transformed and changed dramatically. And because of that, what is happening is that the airspace has opened up due to the policy, which implies that now a lot of people can experiment with even peripheral use cases that may or may not have ROI in the short term. But you're seeing concerted effort to at least validate whether a use case has ROI or not. On the other hand, the use cases that have proven ROI, for example, surveillance use cases, mapping use cases, these use cases have proven ROIs in this drone industry and have been some of the longest standing applications for drones. Wherever there is ROI, there is scale up happening. Our own drones, between myself and Vipul, we are mapping tens of thousands of villages almost every month, and doing a huge service under the Swamitva scheme. Our drones for IdeaForge are being operated by the Government of India themselves, by the Survey of India. In Vipul's case, their own team operates their systems. But every month, thousands of operations are happening, and they are delivering property cards for this use case. So there is one side, which is the side where the use cases are scaling up, wherever the ROI is proven. On the other side, there is tremendous amount of R&D dollars being spent in proving use cases and making sure that there is ROI in a lot of use cases that can then be put to full scale up. So I think that is a huge opportunity, that if you have a drone dream, and if you have even a corner use case for which drones could be potentially useful, now is the time to experiment on, now is the time to put it in operations and deliver whatever outcome you can possibly deliver there. Secondly, what is happening is that by preventing a lot of imports, what we've created is, for the first time, a level playing field vis-a-vis countries that do not follow the export restrictions that India follows. India is a signatory of the Wassenaar arrangements, because of which India has to control its drone exports by a factor of being a part of the Wassenaar arrangements. Therefore, countries that are not a part of Wassenaar arrangements, such as our northern neighbor, they end up taking advantage of this arbitrage. And globally, if you see, all the countries where drones are being manufactured other than our northern neighbor, are all struggling with their domestic industry primarily because of this arbitrage. They have open and cheap imports coming in by the way of our northern neighbor. On the other hand, their own companies cannot export outside their borders without heavy restrictions and a large number of permissions. So that is one of the areas where we believe that the import ban is actually the first attempt to make sure that we have a level playing field for our own nation, and the ecosystem has been given the opportunity of creating use cases and applications for our local conditions, local operations in the right way under the right environment. Thirdly, for the first time, because there is a push towards adoption of these systems, it is not just the drone manufacturing ecosystem or the drone services ecosystem which is going to thrive or come up in a big way. Because the adoption volumes are going up, because there are more numbers of systems being pumped in, even the local component manufacturing ecosystem is benefiting in a big way. And we are seeing indigenization of a lot of subsystems in our own country owing to the volume increase that we are seeing from the demand in the market. So broadly, I expect that the entire ecosystem from drone components to drone manufacturing, which again has been heavily incentivized by the PLI scheme as well, are all the steps in the right direction, and it's going to see a lasting impact on building the right foundation for achieving the dream of becoming the drone hub of the world in the very short term. And the onus is on the industry to leverage this and to deliver the results or the chops of being able to live up to the expectations of our end customers and help this technology scale up very well in India.
Thank you so much for the response. I completely resonate with the response. I'd just like to know opinion from Vipul as well. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, so I think, Heather, a lot of ground has been already covered by Ankit and Arjun, and I totally agree with the points put up by both the gentlemen. There is a lot of change and potential which exists in the market, but what I also feel and would like to add over that is that, see, India is a country where there are a lot of inefficiencies in everything. And if you look at our next decade of development, there is a huge amount of physical asset which will be developed and operated and maintained. Let it be road infrastructure, the basic amenities like the fiber network, linkage of all the villages, a potable water supply in the villages, railway lines, renewable energy upgradations and replacement of non-renewable energy by renewable energy, and also improving the lifestyle and the standards of people living in the rural parts of the country, which is 70% of the population. And that's where that whole dream of becoming a $5 trillion economy or more will get fulfilled, because without these basic amenities and infrastructure and without uplifting the life of rural population, it's close to impossible to achieve that number. So when that starts happening, a lot of expenditure will be made, many projects would be executed, and these projects are going to be massive. Some of them will run for more than a decade, right? And it requires huge amount of data to be able to plan these projects. And also it requires very close monitoring of many of these projects where a lot of physical asset is moving to improve the efficiency and achieve the targets, because even 1% efficiency loss every year means a lot in terms of time and cost. And we have seen in India that how many infrastructure projects, just because of either lack of data or inadequate information available in the hands of decision maker, how it impacts poorly on its implementation. So I think one of the major thing to notice here is that drones are one of the technologies who have the potential to solve many of these problems for some really large sectors. Let it be energy, let it be oil and gas, let it be renewable energy, infrastructure. And the massive amount of data which the drone collects, that itself has so much of potential. Today in India, we are at the dawn of the drone industry. Even after the unlock of the whole regulation, you would see that we are only trying to replace the conventional approaches where we are able to benefit in the terms of time and the cost when it comes to using drones, right? But the value which can be extracted from the data which the drones collect is massive. I mean, this is something what I believe even Aerodyne is doing in the rest of the world. and many other companies in India are also trying to achieve, because the value proposition which is in the data actually increases its ROI if one can actually extract it by almost 500 times. I'm not talking about 2 times or 3 times. If one knows how to extract value from the data, it can just 500 times increase the impact. Look at the current Swamitwa project, which is mapping all the 6.6 lakh villages. We're right now looking at only doing land records from that. But that massive amount of data has so much of potential. You can do entire village planning, you can do sewage planning, you can do electricity line planning, and you name the solutions you want to do where ground information is required, that data can be used. So what I believe is that earlier that potential was very locked because of the policy limitations. People were investing a lot of energy just to be able to get a project, get a contract, and then ultimately operate for a contract. Because there's a lot of effort required to get permissions and exemptions and run around different government offices to be able to do a small proof of concept. So with the 90% of India's airspace freely available for a certain types of drones, and if everyone is following the required regulations around drone certification as well as pilot certification, that itself is a massive change where entrepreneurs like us and many more to come will have the freedom to innovate over not only the hardware but also the software part of it and extract more and more value. So there is a lot of ROI which is going to go back to the government, because what I believe is that directly or indirectly, there is a lot of cost and time saving which will happen over the government projects by deploying drones. And that is one of the primary reasons why organizations like Survey of India or the National Highway Authority of India or the Indian Railways are deploying drones on a serious note. And any part of the world you pick up, I don't think drones are being used at that massive scale. And the kind of growth we have seen over the last 8 months since August, almost a year now, August 21, none other industry in India, in fact, under the current stressed economic environment, has seen that kind of growth. So if people ask questions right today that how do you see this new economic condition? Do you see scaling down the team, or do you see that there will be lack of loss of business? I mean, in the drone industry, the trends are exactly opposite. I believe even Ankit and Arjun will agree with this. We are struggling with such a steep increase in the demand that we are struggling with developing the capacity to meet these demands. So, on a contrary, there are other sectors like automobile and aerospace where there is a decrease in the demand, as well as there is a decrease in the revenue, and there is a struggle to survive and grow. While in the drone industry, there is so much of demand that even the existing companies in India are feeling it very difficult to meet all those demands. So I think from an investment perspective, from economic growth perspective, from employment perspective, and the impact perspective, I believe drone industry is going to take the first position in the coming 1 year when you want to strike balance around everything. So that's my viewpoint on how things are and what will be happening in the near future.
Thanks so much, Vipul, for the answer. And I completely agree with you. Being in the drone industry myself, we have experienced such things where the industry is thriving greatly. And talking about the role of the government, I would just like to understand from you. I understand that the drone itself, the drone industry is in a nascent stage, and some of the people, they are still wrapping their heads around the concept, and government is trying immensely to provide the help necessary. But what additional role, do you feel the government and private sector should play in mainstreaming the drone industry in India?
Who do you want to answer that question?
Vipul, I think that one was for you, Vipul.
It's for you. It was for you.
Cool.
In continuation.
See, my thoughts, I think government is already doing a lot of things over the last 1 year. Unlocking of the policy. So this government has only taken back 2 laws. One was the farm law and another was the drone law first version. So having that seriousness towards drone itself is very commendable. First. Second thing is that bringing subsidies for adoption of drones in the farming use cases. That is another massive use case. Massive step taken. It requires a lot of boldness to have such kind of support for such an emerging technology where people are still trying to understand the impact, at least in countries like India. And then the third, the PLI scheme itself is a massive step taken. Again, 20% benefit over your value add. I don't think that kind of value add or the benefit is provided in any other industry when it comes to PLI scheme. See, I believe when it comes to unlocking the potential, creating the awareness, and also making sure that the ecosystem is provided enough support for, let's say, manufacturing growth and scale up, government has done already a lot. I think there is more onus on the industry to be able to deliver to the expectations. However, I feel that one particular component or part of the ecosystem which government can work upon at this point of time, which is also in sync with what Arjun was telling earlier, is basically indigenization of intellectual property. That's something which is right now not happening at the same scale, at the scale at which the demand is growing and the adoption of manufacturing and other things are happening. Because this is not an Indian domestic industry only, this is a global industry, and everyone is basically racing towards getting the best advanced technologies. So, and then drones are also playing very strategic value for a nation, not only, especially for defense applications now, and also for a lot of civilian applications. So, unless we keep envisaging the future and keep developing it indigenously, somewhere we will lose the race, even though we have a great demand. So, I think government should focus that while we are creating demand, how do we make sure that most of the demand or the majority of demand is being met by Indian technologies? I'm not talking about companies, I'm talking about Indian technologies. So that is the most important thing one can do. So that would require certain interventions in the way our academic curriculum is designed. Still, drone is not a dedicated subject or a topic being taught in these colleges. So what is happening is, I believe other panelists will also agree with this, that there is a great shortage in the talent pool which is available from this sector. You have to train people from almost scratch to be able to contribute towards the development of the sector. So there is a requirement to do that. And secondly, we have to do a lot of indigenization. Even a small component, even if a cable or a connector has to go on the drone, India has got all the potential not only to design but to also manufacture these components. And this is not this is not only a domestic market, that's an international market. I mean, there is no second, let's say, close competition to our neighbor in the north. And India has the potential to become that strong competitor to our neighbors, right? We have everything which is required, the right kind of mindset and as well as the infrastructure. It's just that the intent and strategic investments needs to be made in this direction, right? And the third important part is that while we are indigenizing, how do we incentivize people who are creating IP in this sector? Do we have enough industry and academia partnerships? And if someone is creating indigenization or creating more and more indigenized components and technologies, what is the incentive for that particular company or an individual or a researcher? Do we have grants or anything else, maybe in the terms of low cost funding, or even increasing their benefit on the PLI if the number of components or the proportion of indigenized components is higher? So there can be various ways to incentivize. I'm just throwing a few ideas on the table for other panelists and so that we can brainstorm. But this is the direction I would like government to take. Core focus on IP and incentivizing the IP creation in India. That's where I think we will be able to not only tap the demand but also make sure that we have tight technology control when we are tapping that demand, and not only domestically but globally as well, because the problems which we are trying to solve in India and dealing with, and where drones have already proven their let's say usefulness, these problems are not only limited to Indian boundaries. These problems exist in other parts of the world as well. So that's where I would like to see government adding a lot of value and pushing the indigenization and IP creation.
Thank you so much for your response, Vipul. Arjun, how about you? What are your thoughts on this?
No, I think it's following Vipul. He's covered so many of the topics. It's definitely 100% true that the Indian government has already done so much for the drone industry. It's fantastic, the kind of support that we're all receiving. But there is a real game plan at play here. You know, we if we look back at our neighbor in the north around 30 years ago, they had a 100-year plan to make themselves a successful nation. They decided that they are going to invest into heavy manufacturing, and huge amounts of capex went to those kind of industries, very, very low cost financing. And what happened was that over 30 years created a huge influx of dollars and foreign currency by enabling competitive exports. So I think when it comes to our particular sector, there's a lot of challenges that are yet to overcome. We need a lot of push into, it's a chicken and egg situation. How do I reduce my cost of production? I need to build 100,000 units. How do I get an order to build or the confidence to build 100,000 units? I need that demand. Is that demand coming locally? is it coming internationally? I myself are involved in operations in a number of other countries outside of India as well. And I recognize so many times that there are so many countries that are looking for India, looking towards India for the solution. They want us to provide technology. They want us to provide manpower. They trust in our IP. They trust in our systems and our software. However, it is now up to us. The onus is on us to deliver that. So I think now the ball is in the private sector's park. We need to start investing into the capabilities. Again, touching upon what Vipul said in terms of the skill set, the manpower. There's a lot of investment that needs to go into the academia, the training of these kind of talents, and then we need to make sure that we retain these talents. The brain drain that India suffered over the last 30 years is a huge amount of loss, for the country. How do we stop this from happening? We've identified the problem. Now we need to start clearing up and identifying ways to solve this. And I feel that the private sector and the government need to jointly address this by having initiatives such as what the Niti Aayog has been actively involved in over the last month.
Thanks so much for your response. Wonderful insights. Lastly, I would just like to turn Ankit sir. Your thoughts on the scene.
Thanks, Heather. I think both Vipul and Arjun made some excellent points. What I will talk about is, while we've spoken about how far we have come from where we were in terms of the entire policy landscape and the kind of work the government has done, there are some areas where there is work to be done yet. One of the areas where we need to do a lot of work is how do you streamline the export process? The export process from India is actually a very, very cumbersome process. And while the ask is not to take the meat of the process away, which is to control a dual export item, there are a lot of efficiency areas where things can be done better. And there are specific examples I can give. For example, to export from India, you have drones being categorized in 3 categories. And nobody tells you in which category to apply, in what conditions. So I think that clarification is critical. It is important that if you have given permissions for a particular drone to be exported, then don't reinvestigate the drone part of the export process again and again. You can reinvestigate the end user part of the process. And we've already made it efficient for the same end user, for the same product. But I think there is need to make it more efficient. So there are small things now which make a lot of difference in the process if implemented well. So I think that is one of the parts, being very, very specific here, that needs to be worked upon. That's for the government to work on. On the private industry side, I just want to pick up the thread from where Vipul had mentioned about indigenization of technology. And I think this has been plaguing our ecosystem for a while now. We have too many Me Too companies and too many Me Too solutions in our country, and very few people are focusing on differentiated value creation in the ecosystem. A lot of people are just getting Chinese knockdown kits and claiming them to be Indian developed, Indian built systems. And that's great as long as you're innovating on the application side. But, there isn't enough innovation happening on the application side as well. So it's kind of, a large slurry of non-differentiated products, which only leads to value erosion as far as the market dynamics and market operations is concerned. If you're alive for enough number of time, you don't have a differentiated solution. People are not giving you enough value. The only option you have is to reduce prices to unsustainable levels and, kill the industry in that one sense. And I think the customer is willing to pay value for a differentiated value proposition, but there aren't enough people focusing on that. So I completely second what Vipul was saying, that differentiated value creation, owning the IP is really critical in our ecosystem. I think finding that differentiated niche is what's going to see some of our businesses become unicorns in this space. And I feel that not enough is being done on the private sector side to do that, and that's an imperative on the private sector side. That's all I'll speak on this topic too.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for your response. And again,
So is Heather frozen for you guys as well?
Yeah, I think it's only
I agree
Heather.
with the point.
Hey Heather, we lost you, boss.
Heather,
lost you for
last,
15 seconds.
yeah, last 30 seconds
Oh,
we
are
can
you,
only.
oh, okay. All right.
Very
All right.
good.
I was just saying, I mean, I completely agree with Kitzer, and there has been a lot of Me Too companies, and there has to be a niche for every company, and there should be a differentiating factor which provides that edge. With that, I would like to ask Kitzer one more question: is that with the understanding that drones will be a sunrise sector, now from a research and development perspective, what investment should be made to make India a front runner in the global industry, in the global drone industry? Sorry.
So, I've already spoken about the fact that differentiated offerings, niche offerings, but extremely focused in delivering beyond the obvious solutions to the end customer is going to be an imperative. And the PLI scheme gives you that incentive. In a way, it is giving you 20% of your expenses back to reinvest in technology, if you may. And that's, I think, a huge boost as far as the ecosystem is concerned. So from that perspective, I don't think, more incentive is needed, but it is essential for it to get operationalized and see the results of what it is meant to deliver for the ecosystem. As far as our academia is concerned, I feel that there is something to be done there. And, if you look at the rest of the world, there is a lot of effort and a lot of technology that proliferates from the academic world to the enterprise world. And that happens because the development in the academic world is not restricted to what is popularly known as technology readiness levels. Typically in India, the academia doesn't go beyond stage 4 or 5, TRL levels 4 or 5. I think that's a very, very premature stage for the kind of manufacturing ecosystem we have in India. In India, we don't have a very risk forward enterprise ecosystem. We have a very risk-averse enterprise ecosystem. So they prefer going to Israel or a US or Europe and partner with somebody and get technology in India rather than leverage Indian technology, because the readiness level of the Indian technology in the academia or the research centers is not very high. I think if we can focus our energies over the next 5 years in making sure that all academic programs deliver to TRL 8 or 9 at least, in my view, we will see dramatic amount of shift as far as operationalization of cutting edge R&D, which is truly happening in some of these academic institutions, to see the light of the day in the enterprise, and will actually forward us very fast to being completely differentiated and front runners in the drone industry very, very quickly. So I think with those two key inputs, those would be my thoughts as far as this area is concerned.
Wonderful. Vipul sir, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay. See, I mean, this is in sync with what others have told, and also what I was telling earlier around the intellectual property. See, if you look at some of the known companies globally, or the ones which are dominating the market with their product, let it be a company like Skydio or DJI or even Barrett Systems, which was built over Sensefly. All these teams were actually none other than the research students who later decided to form companies. They did the fundamental research first and arrived at a very stable solution which can solve the problem in a very, let's say, economically viable manner. And then they decided that now is the time to go and start a company around this technology. Skydio emerged from graduates from MIT, and Sensefly emerged from ETH Zurich. Likewise, DJI also was formulated by a few students which were studying in China over some flight control technology. Okay. So I believe there is a requirement that a focused push is made in the academia to conduct research, make drone as one of the mainstream part of the curriculum in both the skill sector, which is in the diploma institutes as well as ITIs, because there will be requirement of different variety of knowledge and skill set, people with different knowledge and skill set when it comes to designing and making drones. On the other side, repairing, maintaining and operating drones. right? And the other way, if we want to create IP, we have to do fundamental research. Without fundamental research, there can't be IP. And fundamental research takes time and takes money both. A VC or a private equity investor will never invest a 4-year, 5-year research plan or a R&D program, which is required to really develop a sound fundamental technology. So I think government can step up there. At least a good portion of the GST, which is being paid by the existing drone companies and their users, can be contributed back towards the R&D initiatives in the country, if nothing else. Okay, that itself will be a good head start to fund the programs. And the second thing is that we need to really quickly look at again doing a lot of indigenization, right? And the third thing which we need to do is that also sensitize the private equity investment market. I think at this point of time, the sentiments have definitely improved, but there's still a lot of confusions and let's say concerns around how this industry will grow, how much dependent it will be on government, what's the potential. The potential mapping itself, defining the total addressable market of India itself, has become very challenging for these private equity investors. While one says it might be a $2 billion market, my calculation says it is $20+ billion market in India. It's about which problems are you really saying drones will solve, right? So which are the problems? I think government can become a very good sounding board for what problems at least government see the drones can solve, and what is the scale of these problems, how it can impact. So a good study can be conducted across different sectors. What kind of efficiencies drone can deliver, what would be their ROI, and then if one invest 1 rupee, how it reflects on the society in terms of the benefit. Because drone is another industry, Heather, where it's not difficult to run a fast growing profitable startup, which is a difficult combination to achieve. We have 100 unicorns in India now, and I think only 60 to 70% of them, 60 to 70% of them are still not profitable. 30-40% have really realized a business model which will break even at some point of time. But if you look at the drone companies, without a favorable policy ecosystem, they have survived for the last 10 years. And if it was not a self-paying business model, it would have not, right? So the possibility to create a unicorn which is also fundamentally strong is very high in the drone ecosystem. So there is a certain amount of sensitization which is required from the government side, so that not only the domestic investors, but a lot of equity infusion and foreign investments can be attracted towards this sector, right? And if in India the demand is so high, if you're able to create a unicorn or a company which can be publicly listed, has technology, has IP, able to solve some of the very critical problems surrounding ESG principles, and has a profitable business, it's a huge thing to achieve for a country, right? Being able to create such companies. And I believe there are already at least 3 to 4 companies in the drone ecosystem which have been able to prove so. So it's important that a focused approach is made to make sure that these companies grow continuously, and a lot of revenue and potential will be created, and ultimately that potential will have some effect on the R&D ecosystem as well. So, and then over a period of time, this will become a self-dependent ecosystem where you don't need to have any government funding. The demand and the size of the existing market and industry would itself be able to fund a lot of R&D programs. The way automobile sector today exists, or a telecom sector exists today, just because they have reached that point in terms of scale and the dependency of both R&D and industry on each other, right? So we need to really take this journey to that level where there is no dependency on government. And I think it needs focused investment, direction, and also maybe a 3 to 4 year strategy around it, right? So that's all from my side.
Thank you so much for your response. And I'm sure, there would be a perspective from Arjun as well on this. What are your thoughts on this, Arjun?
Yeah, it's going to be very hard for me to add perspective. I think Vipul and Ankit have covered so many of the topics. So, but just to kind of shed a little bit of light, trying to add maybe 1 or 2 of the points that haven't been covered. But if we look at the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the world kind of focused most of their time, energy, and resources into manufacturing. We live in a world today where there's no shortage of manufacturing. There is oversupply of basic materials. The real strength and the real road to a successful drone hub by 2030 is going to be driven by R&D. It's going to be driven by domestic IP creation. This is the key ingredient to India's success in this particular field. Now, what is it that drives R&D? Obviously, financial incentive and reward, yes. Passion, yes. There has to be, our focus has to be, and the government's focus has to be to enable these two particular factors. When it comes to the educational facilities, when it comes to the institutions, maybe we can start curating courses, maybe we can start curating opportunities for people to truly benefit from investing their time and energy into further development of these particular technologies. Now, the great thing, for example, Ankit, and Vipul's success over the last 2 years can be used as a shining example of the kind of motivational opportunities and aspirational opportunities. And, mirroring this, there are now hundreds, if not thousands of drone startups in India trying to chase this kind of success. And I think these iterations are what are the underlying features of R&D. So just to mirror what Ankit said, the government has already done a lot to enable the basic fundamentals to drive this proposition, and now it's only a matter of time with large-scale adoption taking place, and that subsequently resulting in manufacturing. R&D is the only way.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for the response. And let's talk about the long-term sustainability. So I would like to address, I would like you to address this question. What should be the key tenets to ensure the long-term sustainability for the Indian drone industry? If you may, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think this comes back to our previous point. I would like to reiterate that focus on R&D and IP creation. Globally, time and time again, it's been proven that robust and continuous R&D and parallel creation of intellectual property is the key driver for sustainability when it comes to any technology sunrise sector. So I think everything that we just spoke about in point 3 is fully applicable for ensuring long-term sustainability of the Indian drone sector. When it comes to the abilities, the offerings, the government proposals in terms of the PLI, in terms of the schemes which are creating, the subsidies and the incentivization of this particular sector, I feel that at some point, once the sector is fully established and grown to be competent enough to withstand the wear and tear of the free market, we need to move to that direction. Initial protectionism will allow stabilization of the ecosystem. However, extended protectionism and dependency on these incentives is probably not the best strategy for long-term health and competitiveness. So the ecosystem will have to stabilize itself on a natural demand and supply balance, which can only happen when we get our costing right, when we get our technology right, when we are able to compete not only domestically but also internationally. So I think those are definitely key to enabling our long-term sustainability. Export is a key feature here. We need to now, Ankit touched upon this as well. We need to start focusing on an export-oriented mindset. Post initial stabilization of the Indian drone ecosystem, creating globally techno-commercial products will be the key to enable long-term sustainability. And by this way, only we should be able to benchmark ourselves with the outside world. So we need to kind of figure out how to cross that bridge. I am very confident that we're on the road to get there. So there's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Ankit sir, what's your thought? You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. So, I definitely resonate with what Arjun just said. I just wanted to add a few more, colors to this whole challenge. I believe that the other problem that I see in India presently is that almost every company wants to do everything. And, as we are scaling, we are, I'll be candid in sort of submitting that it's not easy to do everything, and we do a lot. We are perhaps one of the most vertically integrated, enterprise in the drone space, not just in India but globally as well. However, it is extremely hard to do everything, and in India, one of the things I find is that people are not moving beyond, doing everything, and they are not collaborating. We are extremely siloed in our approach. We are extremely focused, in sort of, you can say, bottom scraping that we end up losing the fact that we are losing momentum on building differentiated technology. We are losing momentum in creating differentiated products because we are so focused on bottom scraping, and it's a survival it's a survival problem, right? I mean, the ecosystem has been in the survival mode for so long that it has made it imperative for the ecosystem to do bottom scraping. So I think that is something that has to change in the long term. Otherwise, we will end up, mainly focused on infighting and creating non-differentiated products that are barely able to meet local demands. Nowhere close to having bandwidth to focus on global demand. And I think that is something which, at least personally, I have been reaching out to as many people as I can to say and to humbly submit that, one, we can't, and two, we don't want to do everything, but we still want to deliver the best technology and the best solution to the end customer. So I think that is something that has to change. The other thing that has to change is that we need to, be very, very conscious of value as far as this ecosystem is concerned. A lot of times, we are doing as an ecosystem, I find that too many people are engaging into predatory tactics and being hyper aggressive and forgetting that this is not an industry that is going to get funded through funding of losses. Nobody is looking to fund losses in the drone industry, and to capture the market by bearing losses or buying business is something that has to stop in the ecosystem if it has to have long-term sustainability. I think it's a really sad state of affairs that people have really eroded value for the ecosystem already, where we have not even started on that journey. So to build and to rebuild value is going to be an uphill task. So I think people really need to, either stay in for the right reasons or, get out. And, there are probably hundreds of other technology opportunities that are equally attractive where at least money can be made, and that the startup winter has come, and, no investor is going to fund losses at this point in time. So, unless the ecosystem evolves to stop doing that, I think we'll have a hard time overall in the industry building it, and we'll kill it too early in its gestation period. So these are some of my thoughts as imperatives of behavior corrections we need in the short term.
Great. Vipulji, would you like to share your thoughts on this? So I would like to ask Vipul, you're on mute actually. Yeah, Vipul, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. I think there is some issue with the interface. Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible. Please continue.
Perfect. So I would like to suggest a different approach. I have a different thought process about this. See, competition we can't control through government. It's a natural thing which will happen, and people have different means of competing and also acquiring market. And this has been happening in many other industries. So government has nothing to do with the businesses. Government can't be in business. It can be only in administration. So I believe what can be done here as a collective effort with the help of government, and also how the industry can come together and do is that if we really want to achieve long-term sustainability, we need to really increase the value potential and the ROI of the drone solutions. So how do we really do that is once the opportunity size itself keeps on increasing faster than the people can scale up, the natural phenomena which will happen is that people will start identifying their own verticals, because then there will be not only single opportunity or a few opportunities to really tap into to run a profitable business. Today what is happening is that because there are only one or two large use cases which exist, and that's the only way to grow and survive, everyone ends up doing everything or the same things, right? So what can be done to avoid such kind of competition, which is counterproductive when it comes to long-term sustainability of any industry, not only drone industry, is to increase the variety and the scale of opportunity, right? So that one company, it's not possible for one company to be able to deliver to all of that, right? So, for example, the use cases are being adopted, let's say around use cases on, let's say either defense or only projects like Swamitwa. There are n number of other potential use cases which exist for similar other large sectors. So what can be done is that where Niti Aayog and many other nodal ministries can come together and start creating awareness among potential users of this technology, that what is possible from drone technology for their sector, and what is not only possible in terms of the ROI, but what exactly that solution should be, because it's an emerging sector. It's at a very, very niche stage at this point of time. So everyone who's looking at this technology to be used also doesn't have enough, or let's say a maturity in their information and knowledge that what particularly this technology can do. Hence, the expectations are also not yet 100% calibrated. So what can be done as a collective effort is to sensitize these potential user bases across government as well as private sector, that what's possible from this particular technology. And while we are doing that, we also highlight that what is the form and the nature of the solution we are looking at, so that there is absolutely no confusion around what is the right solution. Because half of the time people struggle to be able to prove that whether this version of the solution is impactful or the other version of the solution is impactful. So running these potential POCs, pilots, and sensitizing various stakeholders and opening up new opportunities and applications like Swamitwa could be the one fast way to make sure that the industry becomes sustainable, because the unlocking of various demands will happen faster than what people can really scale up to. Hence, the natural phenomena which will happen is that every company would like to grab a particular set of expertise and venture vertically into it. And ultimately, the R&D will also happen very much focused around those use cases, and hence IP will be created. So that's what I feel could be the first step to do. And second step is that, again, which I was telling earlier, that the value of the data is underutilized at this point of time. We really need to have a plan and also a focused approach towards utilizing the maximum value from that data, so that ultimately the profitability of the companies will improve and increase. And only those who understand the data quite well and how to handle with it and how to run analytics on it will be able to also make a certain extra bucks over it, and hence the R&D potential will also increase. So it's all connected, I would say, ecosystem where one thing leads to the other thing. And I believe opening up more opportunities at scale and also improving the impact of a particular or drone solution in a particular sector through unlocking the potential of the data can be two possible things which can actually lead to a long-term sustainability over the years to come.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Lastly, we come to the end of the panel discussion, and I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their inputs. And as always, it's always a pleasure to connect with all the great minds of drone industry in India. And to be a part of this panel discussion, I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their honest opinions on this. And it is wonderful to see you guys grow. And would really like to congratulate on the marvelous work that you guys are doing. And this will definitely set a good example for the young entrepreneurs to enter into the drone industry. With this, I would like to close the panel discussion, and thank you so much for everyone.